we go. Okay, so make sure that you guys have out a writing utensil and that you are filling in those notes as we progress through them today. So we're going to be talking over the next 3 days about these things that are called verbals, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to just talk about what the heck a verbal even is. So make sure you're writing this down in your notes. Do you guys want the front lights off? Is that helpful to help you see? Yes, okay. Ashton, will you hit the right light switch for me, please? Okay, so first things first, make sure you're filling in your notes. Verbals are forms of a verb that are not used as verbs, but instead are used in other parts of speech. Okay, so verbals, they look like verbs, but they don't function like verbs. What? Mind-blowing, I know. And you guys have you talked about verbals at like the junior high? You see a couple head nods. Okay, so hopefully for some of you, a lot of this will be review, but we're going to take it a little bit further than what you guys talked about. So many verbals are modified by adverbs. They may also have complements, just like a verb will have, but their chief function is to act as other parts of speech within a sentence. So you're going to see, as we're talking about the verbals, that they can function as adjectives, nouns, or adverbs within a sentence. They're never going to be functioning as a verb. Okay, that's what's unique about verbals. They look like a verb, but they don't function like a verb. So there are 3 kinds of verbals that we're going to be talking about: participles, gerunds, and infinitives. So today we're going to talk about participles. Tomorrow we'll talk about gerunds. Monday we'll talk about infinitives. Tuesday we're going to talk about a couple of other pretty standard grammar things, parallelism and modifiers. And then your test is going to be Wednesday. Okay, so again, this is just a super tiny little itty bitty short grammar unit. So I'm telling you this in advance because I need you guys to make sure that you're kind of studying your notes and understanding the concepts as we go. If something doesn't make sense to you, come get extra help from me before or after school. Okay, I'm here, my door's open. I'm more than willing to sit down and go through some of these concepts with you guys, because this is where we start to get into the slightly more advanced stuff than what we've been doing. All right, so today we're going to be talking participles. So a participle is a verb form that acts as an adjective, okay? And that is the important part. So I would bold that, underline it, highlight it, whatever you got to do. Participles act as adjectives, okay? They look like a verb, but they act as an adjective. And so, because it's acting as an adjective, that means it's going to modify a noun or a pronoun, because that's what adjectives do, right? They modify nouns and pronouns. We have 3 different types of participles that we're going to talk about. So the first type of participle is called a present participle. It consists of the plain or the base form of a verb. So the base form of any verb is like its most basic form, like jump, run, sing, laugh, skip, sleep. Okay, those are all base forms. To make a present participle, you take that base form and you add ing to the end. Playing, skipping, jumping, singing, running. Okay, that would be a present participle. But remember, it's only a participle if it functions as an adjective. Okay, so here in this sentence would be an example of a present participle being utilized. The sleeping dog groaned. Okay, sleeping is our present participle. It looks like a verb, it has an ing ending, and it's functioning as an adjective. What word is that present participle modifying in the sentence? Dog, right? It's modifying dog. It's giving us more information about dog. It's modifying a noun, making it an adjective. Is this making sense so far? You guys with me? Okay. Now, a present participle will never be a verb on its own. Okay, but if you hook up a present participle, so a verb with an ing with a helping verb, then it changes and it's no longer a participle. It instead becomes part of a verb phrase. Okay, so if you see an ing verb, but it comes right after a helping verb, that's not a participle. Then it's functioning as part of the verb phrase. So in this example, the dog was sleeping. Was sleeping is our verb because it's telling us the action that the dog is doing. Okay, so you just have to look at how the word is functioning in the sentence. If it's a verbal ending in ing that acts as an adjective, it's a participle. If it's a verbal ending in ing and a helping verb comes before it, then it's part of the verb phrase. So you just really have to watch out for these verbals because they are technically verbs at their core. But if they're functioning not as a verb, that's when they become a participle or a gerund or an infinitive. Is that kind of sort of making sense? Just look at how it's functioning. That's the most basic piece of advice I can give you. Okay, so a participle in a verb phrase is part of the verb. It's not considered a separate adjective. So I kind of already said that, but just remember it. All right, the next type of participle that you guys are going to see is a past participle. So in a past participle, we take the base form or the plain form of a verb, so run, jump, skip, whatever, and we add one of these endings, D, ED, NEN, or T, to make it seem like it's past tense. Skipped, jumped, slipped, okay? We add these endings to make it in the past. So here would be an example of that. Discouraged by the mishap, the boy hung his head. So discouraged is a past participle. What word in this sentence is discouraged modifying? Who's discouraged? Malachi? Boy. Okay, so discouraged here is modifying boy. So again, it looks like a verb, but it doesn't act like a verb. It acts like an adjective, which makes it a participle. Now, past participles can also be in a verb phrase, okay? And technically, they're not past participles then, they're actually a verb. So here would be an example of that. I had been informed that she would not be there. So again, if you see a participle-looking word, like informed, but it has a helping verb or verbs before it, it's no longer a participle. Now it's part of the verb phrase, just like we talked about with our present participle. So again, you just have to look, how is it functioning in the sentence? Is it functioning as a verb, or is it modifying or giving more information about another noun or pronoun in the sentence? All right, our last type of participle is called a perfect participle. Perfect participles, what they do is they indicate completed action, right? So present participles indicate that the action is happening right now. Past participles indicate that it happened, a while ago. But perfect participles are like, this action is completely over and done with, right? It's not going to happen again. Now, the way that we make a perfect participle is we add the word having in front of the past participle. So this is where you have to, again, be really careful. Because remember, participles function as adjectives, but sometimes we confuse having with a helping verb, which it's not. Okay, so if you see the word having before a past participle, it's still a participle. It's not part of the verb phrase. So here would be an example of that. Having finished her book, she took a nap. So having finished is the perfect participle. Okay, what is having finished modifying? Who has finished? Marcus? She. Okay, so it's modifying or giving us more information about she. You guys all with me so far? Is this kind of sort of making sense? Any questions? Okay, we're going to do some practice here. So, on your computer, I want you guys to see if you can underline the participle in this sentence. And if you feel so bold, see if you can draw an arrow to the word that it's modifying. Let's see if we can finish in 5. Okay, that is looking really good. So the verbal, which most of you identified, is glancing, right? Remember, to be a participle, it has to end in ing, or it has to have a past tense ending like d, ed, nt, something like that. Okay, so shook could not be a participle. First of all, because it doesn't have an ending of ing or a past tense ending. Okay, but also because if we look at how it's functioning in the sentence, it's the verb, right? The farmer's the subject, what he's doing is he shook. So that cannot be our participle because that's the verb of the sentence. So our participle, it still looks like a verb, right? But it's not functioning as a verb because what is that participle glancing modifying? Who's glancing? Somebody I haven't heard from yet today. There's a lot of you out there. Paige, the farmer. Okay, so it's modifying farmer. It's giving more information about the farmer. Okay, so it's functioning as an adjective modifying farmer, which makes it a participle. All right, nice job. Try this one. Let's take about 5 more seconds to finish. Beautiful job, you guys. Absolutely beautiful job. You guys are pros at this. All right, so let's start with the subject. What is the sentence about? Chance? The runner. Okay, so runner's our subject, and then what's the verb? Somebody I haven't heard from? Kylie? Limped. Okay, so we have to make sure that we're not underlining limped as a participle because limped is the verb of our sentence. Therefore, it's not a participle, right? So then we have to ask ourselves, okay, do we see any verb-looking words in the sentence that end in ing or like d, ed, t, something like that? And we sure do, right? How many participles are in this sentence? Show me on your finger, everyone. How many participles in this sentence? 2. Okay, there are 2. And I think everybody was able to get at least one of the 2, but you always gotta look at the whole sentence. Okay, there are 2 here. So the first one is in the same place as our last one, so it was pretty easy. Bruised, right? Bruised is our first participle. Where's our second participle? Somebody I haven't heard from. Clayton. Defeated. Okay, again, it looks like a verb, but it's modifying the subject runner. If it's modifying a noun, that makes it an adjective. Okay, remember, participles are always adjectives. So here we have bruised and defeated, both modifying runner, so those are our 2 participles. Okay, this next practice slide is a little different. I'm gonna have the participle underlined for you, and you guys need to choose what kind of participle it is: present, past, or perfect. Use your notes; they're right in front of you. Let's finish in 5. Okay, nice job. That is a present, right? And we know that because it ends in ing and it's showing present action, like it's happening in the present. Try this one. Let's finish in 5. Okay, nice job. This one is a past, right? It has one of those past tense endings, D, ED, EN, or T, which is what this one ends in, right? And it's showing action that happened in the past. Now, you have to be careful here. It's not a perfect, because perfect participles will always have what word in front of them? Then, having. Okay, so if this had the word having in front of it, then it would be perfect. Okay, so perfect will always have the word having. All right, nice job on that. Any questions so far? Is this making sense? Good review from last year, hopefully. Marcus?
Can you have like a present that has?
No. Okay, that's a great question. So Marcus just said, can you have a present and a past participle? I'm assuming you're asking in like the same sentence.
Yep.
No, because that would be bad writing. Because when you're writing a sentence, you never want to shift between present and past tense. I would say maybe the only way you would ever see that is if you had a direct quote. If you're maybe writing in present tense and then your quote is in past tense. But that's the only way it would ever be acceptable.
If I have a present
You could have a, no. I was almost gonna mess myself up. No. You can never mix them up. Okay, because even if you had like a past tense and a perfect, you're still switching tenses. Does that make sense? So like perfect tense, while it does technically look like it's in the past, it is a different tense than past tense. Okay, past tense just said that it's something that happened maybe yesterday or a couple days ago or last week. Perfect tense is like the action is fully completed and probably not going to happen again for a while. Okay, even though the distinction is very thin between the two, you should never use multiple tenses within the same sentence. The only exception being if you have a direct quote. Make sense? That's an awesome question. Love that. Any other questions? Okay, so now we're going to talk about phrases. Okay, because you can have participles that are actually used in a phrase. And in the examples that I was giving you, we actually saw some participle phrases. But I was just having you identify the participle, not the whole phrase. So participle phrases are going to have the participle, but they're also going to contain all of the related words. So any modifiers of the participle, any complements of the participle, okay, and all together the phrase still functions as an adjective. So here's an example of what that would look like. Approaching the curve, the truck slowed down. Truck is our subject, slowed is our verb, down is an adjective modifying the verb. Approaching is our present participle. The curve is telling us where we're approaching. Okay, so it's a modifier of the participle approaching, which means it's part of the whole participle phrase, approaching the curve. This whole phrase together is modifying what word in the sentence? Logan. What word in the sentence is approaching the curve modifying? Truck. Okay, it's working together as one complete phrase, functioning as one adjective to give us more information about what the truck is doing. So it's modifying that noun, functioning as an adjective. Does that make sense? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Some participle phrases can also contain prepositional phrases. So they can get real fancy. And you can have one prepositional phrase as part of your larger participial phrase. You can have multiple prepositional phrases as part of your larger participial phrase. Okay, you can get real fancy with your writing. So here would be an example of what that would look like. Startled by the number of kickers warming up, Bill grew nervous. Okay, Bill is our subject. Grew, is our verb. Nervous is an adverb telling us how he grew. Okay, and then this whole thing right here at the beginning, startled by the number of kickers warming up, is our participial phrase. Where's our participle? In that phrase here, underline, where's our participle? Someone I haven't heard from. Lauren? Startled. Startled's our participle. By the number is a prepositional phrase. Of kickers warming up is a prepositional phrase. Both of those prep phrases are giving us more information about why this person was startled. The whole participle phrase is functioning to modify what word, Ashton? What word is this participial phrase modifying? Bill. Right? It's giving us more information about the subject of our sentence, Bill. Woo! Aren't you glad I'm not teaching you how to diagram these? You'll get the joy of doing that next year.
No.
Have you guys already learned how to diagram participial phrases? Does anybody remember? You all just like, I'm never gonna have to do it again, so I'm just gonna forget it. Oh, they're fun. Okay, anyways, so you'll get to diagram them next year. But for now, I just want to make sure that you're able to identify them. Any questions on the participial phrases? Is that making sense? Okay, let's do some practice just to make sure that it really makes sense. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to underline the whole participle phrase in this sentence and then draw an arrow to the word that it's modifying. Let's finish in 5. Okay. So here, really we just have to ask ourselves, okay, let's just start by labeling the sentence. I feel like when you label the sentence, it becomes a lot easier. Where's our subject of this sentence? Who or what is the sentence about? Lathan, who or what is this sentence about? Defendant is our subject. What's the verb? Diana, what's the verb for defendant? Shook is the verb. Okay, direct object, Peyton. Defendant shook what? Direct object. Defendant shook what?
Oh,
Hands is the direct object. What's with her lawyer? Maddie Friedman? With her lawyer is what? A prepositional phrase. Okay, and it's telling us, it's modifying shook. Because it's telling us who she shook with. Okay, so all of this stuff after the comma is already labeled. So really, if we label our sentence and think about how everything's functioning, we should be able to find the participle. Where's our participle? Just our single word participle in this sentence. Mason, where's our participle in this sentence? Acquitted. Okay, it looks like a verb, but it ends with that past tense ed, and it's not functioning as a verb. Where's our participial phrase, Aiden? Well, the whole participial phrase. Acquitted by the jury, right? So this is our participial phrase. What's our participial phrase modifying, Marcus? Defendant. Okay, now are you guys noticing a pattern with these participial phrases and how they're punctuated? Malachi? Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal. Participial phrases, because they're really not necessary most of the time, or because they're adding just like extra information that we don't really need in the sentence, because like the sentence would be fine, the defendant shook hands with her lawyer, right? We don't need this acquitted by the jury. We really don't. Participial phrases are often considered to be non-essential, meaning that we don't need them in the sentence for the sentence to make sense. Well, anytime you guys have a non-essential element, you have to offset it by punctuation. So most of the time, not 100% of the time, but most of the time, when you have a participial phrase, it's going to be surrounded by commas. So those commas are kind of like big giant arrow neon signs pointing at where your participial phrase is. So if you see something like this at the beginning of a sentence and there's a comma before the independent clause, you know that this is probably your participial phrase. Try this one. Think about what I just said. Let's try to finish in 5. Okay, again, if you're not sure where to start, label your sentence. Who or what is the sentence about? What's our subject? Jamie. Bill is our subject. Mary, what's our verb? Made. Okay, made is our verb. What's our direct object? Maddie Honerman, Bill made what? A joke. Okay, what are and nervous doing? Santi. What are and nervous doing? Yeah, they're modifying joke, right? So they're both adjectives. Okay, so all that's left, you guys, is this worried about the tryouts. Oh my gosh, it's surrounded by commas. Can you believe that? Mind-blowing, crazy. Remember what I said? Your commas are like your big neon arrow signs pointing like, hey, this is a participial phrase. Okay, because it is. This is a participial phrase. What's our participle? Oh gosh, who have I not picked on yet today? Me. No, you already answered. I think I've officially picked on everybody. Yay, me.
Two.
Yay. No, he answered the question already. All right, champ. Worried about the tryouts. Where's our single word participle? No. Worry. Okay, worried. It looks like a verb. It's past tense. It ends in ed. So that's our participle. Diana, where's our participial phrase? Worried about the tryouts. All this stuff inside of the commas. And what word is that phrase modifying? Great. Bill, right? Because Bill was the one worried. Woo! I feel like we're getting it. You guys are crushing it. Okay. The other thing I want to point out, participial phrases typically start with what? Think about all of our examples. What do participial phrases typically start with? Marcus. No. No. Participial phrases typically start with what? Okay? The participle. Okay, they typically start with the participle. Now, not always. Sometimes you might have a modifier before the participle, but for the most part, participial phrases are going to start with the participle. So, you guys have like 2 tricks in your toolbox now. First trick, look for the participle because that's probably going to be where the phrase starts. Second trick, look for the commas because your phrase will most likely be inside of those commas. You're welcome. All right, let's try one more. We can finish in 5. Okay. Lathan, subject of this sentence. No. Try again. Speech, because Lathan, what is his doing? Modifying speech. Okay, so speech is our subject. Logan, verb. No. Try again. Was. It's our linking verb. Am is our verb. Be been. Is a linking verb. Be a linking verb. Okay, so was. What's about? Ben. Think about it. About. What could it be? Oh, I'll give you the first one. Honorman. It's a preposition introducing our prepositional phrase about a famous soccer player. So we already have his speech was about a famous soccer player. They already have their functioning roles, right? Okay, and of course, we've got our commas offsetting our participial phrase inspired by the World Cup competition. Ashton, what's our participle? Inspired. Santi, what's inspired by the World Cup competition modifying? Speech. I feel like you got it. Any questions? Okay, this went well. And you're welcome. I left you 15 minutes to finish your homework. So in theory, you guys should not have any homework. Okay, you should be able to get that worksheet done. So you can be working on one of two things. You can be working on that participial worksheet, or you can be working on your essay. Okay, remember, due by 4, upload it to Google Classroom and turnitin.com. Do not forget to upload it both places. Please and thank you. If you have questions as you're working on your worksheet, please come and ask me. That's why I am here.